Good morning, everybody. Please can I welcome everyone to this meeting of Cabinet on Thursday, the 9th of February from the Walton Suite at the Winchester Guildhall. The time is 9:31 a.m. My name is Councillor Martin Todd, Chairperson of the Cabinet and Leader of the Council. This meeting is live streamed from the Council's YouTube channel, and the recording will also be available after the meeting. Subtitles can be switched on, and advice on how to turn these on is set out on our website. If you are joining us online, please turn your camera and microphone off until your item. Can everyone ensure mobile phones are on silent? Can I remind members to use their microphones and speak directly into them? Please do not turn away when speaking to enable your comments to be picked up on the recording of the meeting. In the unlikely event that it is necessary to evacuate the building, the fire alarm will sound. Please follow all the instructions given to you by our team. Turning to the agenda. Do we have any apologies for absence?
No, Chairman.
Thank you. I have nothing to announce in terms of membership of Cabinet committees. Disclosures of interest. Councillor Thompson.
Sorry, got in quickly there. Yes, I'd like to declare an interest on item little c in the general fund budget, which relates to Hampshire Cultural Trust. I'm a board member, and therefore I declare an interest in this item. I will stay in the room any debate around this.
Thank you very much. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. Can I declare a personal but non-professional interest?
Thank you very much indeed. And I will declare the same interest since I'm also a county councillor. Are there any other interests? No? Okay. The next item is the requests of councillors to speak. I have requests from 3 councillors who I can see in the room. Councillor Wallace wishes to speak on items 8, 9 and 10. Councillor Horrell wishes to speak on item 8 and Councillor Bolton wishes to speak on item 9. The next item is public participation. We have nobody registered for public participation. However, if representatives of TACT wish to say anything on the housing HRA paper, then of course they'd be very welcome to do so. Councillor Wallace, I noticed you're waving your arm. Oh, only item 8. That's absolutely fine. As you wish. Cabinet. Item 6, we have the minutes of the previous meeting held on 25th of January 2023. Are you happy to approve those minutes? Thank you. Leader and Cabinet members' announcements. I have some news and I would like to announce. So, colleagues, I have some news about the judicial review process relating to the derelict former leisure centre. Last Friday, Lord Justice Lewison refused permission to appeal on the judicial review to the applicants, rejecting the accuracy and legality of all the claims made. And so now, after rejection of the applicant's case by 3 separate judges on 3 separate occasions, the judicial review process relating to the derelict former leisure centre is now at an end. Lord Lewison ruled that the case had so little prospect of success that it was not worth the Court of Appeal's time to even hear it. Importantly, his ruling makes clear that the processes that the Council has put in place since the very beginning of the project to protect both the green space and the public interest are real and substantial and not as described by the applicants. The good news is that this now unblocks the project and means that we can move forward to the consultation process that we and the university promised as far back as November 2021. And I will be coming back to you shortly with the details of this. This administration is committed to tackling the derelict and rundown areas of our city as part of our positive plan for our city and district's future. but we're also committed to protecting the nature and heritage that makes our city so special. And as we have been from the very beginning of this project, we remain absolutely determined that this project will deliver on both of those priorities. Are there any other announcements? Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, very happy to announce that in partnership with the Department for Work and Pensions, we are running a Jobs and Opportunity Fair on the 24th of February between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. In the Sports Hall of the Winchester Sports and Leisure Centre. This is a great opportunity for local employers to come and talk to local job seekers too, and also make contacts between those employers, such as we've got the University of Winchester coming along and lots of others. So it really, I would encourage any of our residents who are listening today, who are perhaps wanting to get back into the workforce or just looking for job opportunities that may be available within our district, to come along to that and have a talk to those employers that will be there. Second announcement is about our very exciting Enchanted Garden Light event that we've got coming up starting on Saturday, the 11th of February. The event is being held in Abbey Gardens. It's going to be running for 3 weeks, and it's going to be free for everyone to come along and see the lights and wander through what will be an enchanted garden. So do encourage your friends and neighbours and relatives to come along and see that. As I say, it's free to all, and it is running from Saturday the 11th for 3 weeks. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Do we have any other announcements? Right, on to the next item, which is the Housing Revenue Account budget for 2023-24, pages 11 to 42 of your report pack. Deputy Leader, would you like to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Leader. I'm very pleased to be able to introduce the Housing Revenue Account budget today. It sets out a viable and sustainable budget that will, despite considerable inflationary and cost pressures on the HRA, allow the Council to continue to invest in our existing housing stock to make it safer, warmer, more energy efficient and healthier, including investment to help cut carbon, energy consumption, carbon, and perhaps most importantly for our tenants in this cost of living crisis, help to cut energy bills. It will allow us to continue to provide the high quality tenant services that our tenants rightfully expect, and also continue to build and provide the new social homes that we know are needed right across the district, enabling us to continue to make significant progress towards the ambitious target of providing 1,000 additional new homes over 10 years. The revenue budget also provides for a revenue investment of 400,000 in the HRA services, which will include funding additional fire and building safety compliance measures, making our homes safer, bringing forward the Retrofit Ready programme, which tenants would like to see implemented quickly, making homes warmer, more energy efficient and reducing tenants' energy bills. Allowing for the additional investment in a preventative rather than reactive programme to address issues related to condensation, damp and mould, making tenants' homes healthier. Given the significant inflationary and other cost pressures that the budget is under, and the need to invest in the growth options I've just outlined, as well as taking into account tenants' real concerns about their own budgets during the current cost of living crisis. There's been considerable thought and deliberation into the rent setting for next year, including discussions with TACT on 3 separate occasions to fully understand their concerns and their views. The report proposes a 7% rent increase for 23-24, which is in line with the government rent increase cap. While it's important to recognise that most of that additional revenue this rent increase will generate will be consumed by inflationary cost pressures, contract costs, and significant increases in construction costs, it will ensure that the HRE budget remains sustainable and viable over the 30-year budget period. We know that a 7% increase is in line with neighbouring local authorities and registered providers in the area, and it takes into account that over 60% of our tenants are in receipt of statutory benefit, such as housing-related benefits and universal credit, and that these benefits will be increased by 10.1% in April, in line with the September 2022 inflation figure. Pensions will also be increasing by 10.1%, which is significant for our more elderly residents. We are also proposing to limit the rent increase on our shared ownership properties to 7%, even though the government has not set a rent increase cap for these properties. So in theory, their rent could have increased by 13.1%. This would be a significant increase for many families in our share ownership properties, many of whom could be described as just managing. So we feel it is right that at this time, that rent increase should also be capped at 7%. In addition, service charges will be capped at 7% because while as a responsible landlord in a normal year, we would seek to set service charges to allow for full cost recovery, we again recognise that this is another extraordinary year where we have exceptional circumstances around the cost of living. Therefore, for this year, service charges will be capped at 7%. I also wanted to add one last point. Within the budget, we have also maintained a 215,000 welfare fund, which will act as a safety net for those tenants who are facing particular hardship and need exceptional additional one-off support during the year. Happy to answer any questions, and we also have Dick Johnson and Gilly Knight. I don't know whether Gilly you wanted to come forward. And also Simon Hendy, the Strategic Director with responsibility for housing in the room to help with questions. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. I don't know if TACT would like to make any comment. There's no requirement to do so, but you're welcome if you would like to. Thank you very much indeed, David.
In meetings we've had with the council, the majority of TACT members did go for the 7% rise, and we are also happy that that the shared ownership is going to be about 7% as well. So that'll help people who are finding difficulty, and also the hardship fund will come into play, I expect. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed for your comments. We now have two councillor deputations. Councillor Wallace, would you like to come forward?
Yeah. I didn't speak on this item a couple of days ago at the Scrutiny Committee when it was reviewed, and that was because, but I wanted to speak on it today, just to say that when I've looked at housing reports in the past, I've struggled with them a little bit, but I thought that the housing report was, it's a difficult subject at particularly at this time of year, but particularly with everything that's happening in the world. And but it was a very well organised, thought out and presented report, and I appreciate all the efforts that all those involved have gone to preparing that report. Not all of the reports that we see before us at committee are clear, and but there's obviously a lot of work gone into that report. It'd been well thought out, and the arguments presented in it made sense to me, so I will be supporting that report going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, and it's always appreciated, I think, particularly by officers when they get thanked for all the hard work they put in to making these reports ready for this meeting. Councillor Horrell, would you like to come forward?
Chair, thank you. Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to speak. And may I echo my thanks to the officers for the work they've undertaken to deliver the budget recommendation. As you know, I'm very supportive of the housing team and extremely proud of the homes and communities that we provide as a council. We have many neighbours who are envious of what we're able to do. As I've already commented earlier in the week at scrutiny, it is really helpful that TACT have been involved in several conversations about the possible rent increases for 23-24, and that has proven very beneficial. And as indicated by David at TACT and indeed this morning, we've been advised that the 7% rent increase is supported by the TACT representatives, but I continue to just question, and I've been unable to receive an answer to what exactly does the council intend to do with the difference between the 7 and 6% rent increase. The 7% generates 1.8 million of that order versus 6%, and the current estimates advise those huge inflationary increases will absorb 1.449 million. So that leaves about 350,000 for other projects. We've identified 100,000, but I'd like the administration please to explain what they expect to do with the remainder of the cash. After all, it is the tenants' money, and I think it would be helpful if they understood that as best that we can explain at this time. I personally was delighted to see the possible nitrate and phosphate mitigation opportunities identified in the budget, and the commitment of giving £200,000 to the cost of that project. But we don't see in the budget any possible credits once our own mitigation requirements have been taken into account. Is that because we're not sure at this point, or is there some reason why the positive element, which I'm sure will come from this excellent work, has not been taken account of? In 4.2, the budget recommends an enhancement of the property services team. Please can we better understand the 6.2 FTEs, what they'll be deployed for, and what are they specifically going to do for the tenants? The Retrofit Ready programme has attracted much support, as one would expect at this time. The report indicates over 800 expressions of interest have been received. Do officers believe we can deliver against the expectations of the tenants who have indicated an interest in the scheme based on the current resources allocated in the budget? I appreciate is how long is a piece of string, but indeed we know that people are very keen for this to progress. And particularly, do we need to be cautious and add any other budget amounts to ensure we can deliver? And finally, Chair, I don't know whether you were able to address the homelessness question on page 76 that I asked at scrutiny, and I was seeking clarification. But if we have that information today, that would be most helpful. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Deputy Leader.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Councillor Wallace, for your positive comments. And also Councillor Horrell for your positive comments of the paper in general. The 400,000, how we intend to spend that is detailed in section 2.5, and we do talk about the additional costs that we will incur around the building and fire safety regulations. We do talk about the additional costs to do with the potential disrepair claims, and we do go into detail about how we want to invest for a preventative programme to deal with issues like damp and mould. So I do feel that we've given enough detail at this time. Thank you. In terms of the micronutrient mitigation, as I said at scrutiny, this is a piece of work that we've had ongoing since September. And we are working very closely with Natural England and the Environment Agency, as well as Push, to look at a scheme that would allow us to undertake works to our own sewage treatment works, which could provide enough micronutrients for us to offset for our own housing schemes, which are being held up at this time. We believe there could be additional credits, but until that scheme is approved, until we know for certain, we aren't able to cost what those will be. But we do believe that there will be significant additional credits at this time. Obviously, once we have that information, that's something we'll be sharing potentially at Cabinet Housing if it's there in time. The staff costs, which I think was the next question, I may defer to Mrs. Knight to explain the 6.5, and then I will come back to the retrofit. Thank you, Mrs. Knight.
Thank you, Councillor Ferguson. Yes, I can explain that the new Building Safety Act that came into force this April means that we really do need to increase the resources within the property services team. We currently have one dedicated officer that deals with our compliance duties, and we really do need to build that team over the next few years. We're also wanting to be, as Councillor Ferguson has mentioned, much more preventative in our approach towards responsive repairs, including mould, damp and condensation. We want to do much more closer work with tenants, and we also want to provide longer appointment times for surveyors to really be able to focus on those more challenging issues. So the team are fairly small, and I think it needs to grow.
Thank you, Mrs. Knight. On the Retrofit Ready programme, absolutely, we've seen a fabulous response from tenants asking to be part of that Retrofit Ready scheme. Of the 1,400, we have 806 residents in our lowest energy performing homes that want to be part of it. A letter has already gone out to all of those 806 tenants who've opted in, explaining what happens next. The work is being undertaken in a number of phases. So as well as doing the first 400 energy assessments, which are being booked in at this time, we're also looking at the elements of that programme which we can do immediately. So the property services team, where they can identify that there are upgrades to windows and doors, those won't wait for the energy assessment, those will happen immediately. Where the property services team can identify that we could install newer, perhaps more efficient extractor fans, and those are needed, those will be happening as soon as possible, if not almost immediately. In the paper, we do talk about how we feel able that the property services team can manage the work that needs to be done once we have the energy assessments completed. But we also do talk about the need for an administrator, because there's going to be a lot of writing and a lot of setting up appointments, etc. So there is additional budget for that. Just on the energy assessments, we have procured Energy South to do those energy assessments for us. And again, those are, as that contract's already signed and that work's already being started. So I feel that we are making good progress, because we heard very loud and clear from the tenants. They said, yes, we want this programme, we want to be part of this, but we would like it to go ahead as quickly as possible. And that's exactly what we have done. On the homelessness grant, I'm going to have to defer to Mr. Johnson. I believe you're going to look at that number. Thank you.
Yes, so essentially Appendix 1 has a column of budget adjustments in the brought forward column 2, and where it has the adjustment against the homelessness budget, it essentially is a tidying up exercise and represents the cost of staff associated with homelessness being transferred into that particular cost centre.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. I believe that was all the questions, Leader.
Thank you very much, Deputy Leader. Before I open the questions to the rest of Cabinet, I wondered if there were any points raised at the Scrutiny Committee that you would like to highlight and that we need to address or consider in our decision making.
I don't believe that there were, to be frank. We talked about the micronutrient work that was ongoing. We also talked scrutiny, there were some questions about the money that was being set aside for the Homes for Ukraine scheme. Would you like me to look through that? I don't believe that.
If you, I believe, have some draft minutes. So if there is anything that got noted down that didn't make it into either my notes or Councillor Ferguson's notes, is there anything?
Of course, Leader, Deputy Leader. I'm the lead officer for scrutiny, so did take some notes and gave some feedback at the meeting. There were several items raised and discussed during that meeting around the delivery of the New Homes programme, and a discussion regarding the setting of the rent cap. There was discussion, as the Deputy Leader has said, around funding to support the retrofit programme. Considerable discussion around the nutrient mitigation requirements that could influence the delivery of new homes. Certainly some discussion around grant conditions for the provision of properties under the local authority housing fund, and Deputy Leader will invite seem one of our colleagues to discuss that in just a moment. Once again, a conversation regarding the fees and charges and related to garages and the use of right to buy receipts. And as Councillor has already indicated, we're awaiting clarification of the movement in the housing management special homelessness budget across a couple of years. So those notes will be available for council in a form of minutes, which are currently being prepared. Thank you.
I don't think there's much. Is there anything that needs addressing that we haven't already covered? I think we're.
I feel that we have already covered them. It may be beneficial for Cabinet for Ms. Hendy to explain the addition to the HRA paper this year of potentially some funding to acquire 17 additional new homes to help house our Ukrainian guests who are with us who may be at risk of homelessness, and also one Afghan family. That's in section 19.5 of page 73 for Cabinet members. Mr. Hendy, did you just want to explain?
Yes, thank you, Deputy Leader. Through you, Leader. The local authority, which has the opportunity to seek funding under the local authority housing fund to help fund the acquisition of, in total, 17 units of accommodation, 16 for Ukrainian households, one larger property for Afghan households currently living in bridging hotels. Those properties, if you're minded to support that proposal, will be held in the housing revenue account. The households that would be allocated those homes would come through the homelessness route into those properties, and obviously they would remain in those properties as long as they have leave to remain, stay in the country. So their immigration status allows that to take place.
And again, just for Cabinet's benefit, these would be 17 additional new homes on top of the 1,000 target. And the intention is that when they're no longer needed by refugees, they would go back into their housing revenue account and be there for general use. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Cabinet, are there any other questions that you have? We've had a very comprehensive introduction, and obviously we had a comprehensive discussion at the Scrutiny Committee, but I don't know if there are any other questions from Cabinet colleagues. None. There you go. A tribute to your comprehensive introduction, Deputy Leader. Any debate? Councillor Lurney.
Thank you, Leader. I do strongly support this paper. I think it's important for us to recognise that the sector of society which is most suffering from the cost of living crisis is those in private rented accommodation, who often not only have to pay very high rents but are living in much inferior accommodation to that found within our housing revenue account. And I think it's really important to say that while we're looking after the money of tenants, that's the money of tenants both present and future. We are really committed to expanding the supply of genuinely affordable accommodation. And this sustainable housing revenue account gives us a means to do that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Gordon-Smith, did I see your hand?
Yes, thank you, Leader. I obviously we prefer to have the rent increases as low as possible. It hits people's pockets. But to me, 7% seems a good compromise. But I think we should remember that at the moment we're running up the down escalator. Construction costs are at least 12% inflation last year. And that's not for, it can be higher with a lot of specialist items. Timber products coming from Europe have gone up even more than that. So and if we want to spend money on retrofit, that's all again very specialist kit and skills, and the cost of that is going up all the time. So I'm fully supportive of the 7% increase, just to keep us from sliding back down the escalator too much.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, very happy to support the recommendations in this report. I really do believe that decent, well-kept homes, keeping abreast of up-to-date safety measures, investing in our properties by carrying out regular maintenance, coupled with the potential to provide lower fuel bills for our tenants through our Retrofit Ready programme, is at the very heart of what the HRA does, and this budget is really central to that. In addition, supporting our tenants and our communities in such challenging times is an important priority for us all. And I welcome the fact that the Welcome Support Fund, originally set up as a one-off budget last year, is now built into the core HRA budget on an annual basis to help those most vulnerable to be able to continue their tenancies during this extraordinary and really incredibly difficult period. I'm also pleased that we'll be continuing to support our communities within the estate improvement programme, moving away from some of the older schemes which saw an increase in car park provision, and really refocusing instead on investing in carbon reduction measures, such as the installation of EV charging points in those parking areas around our estates, and helping to ensure that our tenants can also contribute and not feel left behind by our push to become carbon neutral in 2030. Our ambitious plans on the New Homes programme, in spite of the rapidly rising cost of materials, increased labour costs, plays a crucial role in our commitment to provide homes for all. With increasing pressure from our residents who are looking to us to provide low-cost affordable housing, it is absolutely vital that we continue to increase our stock year on year. And I hope that this is something that can be supported across the council. So I thoroughly support the recommendations on this report and would like to thank officers and Councillor Ferguson for all the time and effort that they've all put into producing such a comprehensive report and budget. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Porter.
Thank you. I'd just like to say as well, I support the additional staff that are going to be taken on and the additional time. It's not an easy job at all. And I do appreciate that a few more minutes spent with every tenant may make a real difference. So I'm really looking forward to seeing the results of that. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Deputy Leader, any final comments?
Thank you, Leader. I did in fact make a very comprehensive introduction, as you said, but I would like to thank Cabinet colleagues for their support and the additional points that they have made. There is much more in this budget than I've been able to highlight today, but I think it is very sound and it puts tenants at its heart, both present tenants and future tenants. So, Leader, I think that I don't need to say anything more.
No, thank you very much indeed. And I join with you in wanting to thank officers for all the work that they have put in. I'd like to thank you personally for the leadership that you've shown and the work that you do with officers and with tenants to make sure that we have such a strong programme put together. It's greatly appreciated. This forms an absolutely vital part of our commitment to having decent, high quality, affordable homes across the district. It reflects our priority on the cost of living. It reflects our desire to go greener faster. And it does so in very challenging financial times. So it's obviously a set of recommendations that I fully support. In terms of what's in front of us today, we're being asked to make some recommendations to council. So we're not actually making the decision here. We're making a decision to recommend a programme to council. In paragraph 12, so in recommendation 12, that we have in front of us on the list, it should refer to section 19.5. And I think within the paper, there's an amendment required in paragraph 13.3 that should read E and D. As we go through the recommendations, assume that those changes have been made. In essence, we're being asked to approve the HRA budget for 23-24 as outlined in appendices 1 and 2, approve the capital programme as outlined in appendices 3 and 4, approve the capital expenditure in 23-24 of 9.53 million for maintenance, improvement and renewal as outlined in Appendix 3, approved the new homes budget for 23-24 of 20.518 million, subject to scheme approvals, approve the indicative funding of the HRA capital programme in Appendix 5, note the operating HRA financial plan operating account extract as in Appendix 6, agree with the proposal to fund 400,000 for new initiatives in section 13.1 of the report, agree to the provision of a welfare support budget of 215,000, refocusing this to support vulnerable tenants to maintain their tenancies during this period of unprecedented cost pressures, approve a 7% rent increase, approve a cap on the average overall increase for tenant service charges, also of 7%, approve a discretionary 7% cap on the annual rent increase for shared owners, in line with the increase in social affordable rents to existing tenants, and approve in principle the HRA funding of approximately 3.5 million from the unallocated new homes budget to meet any grant requirements to acquire the 17 properties in accordance with the local authority housing fund grant conditions as detailed in section 19.5 as opposed to 19.4 that is written there. Cabinet, are you agreed to forward those recommendations? Thank you very much indeed. The next item for discussion is the general fund. Councillor Power, would you like to introduce the paper?
Be delighted, Leader. Thank you very much. This is the financial plan to deliver the council plan, which we agreed in January. When we last looked at these figures in November, there was a possibility of a £1 million deficit in the current year and ever increasing deficits thereafter. Late in December, we discovered that the government settlement would be approximately 2 million. And there was an indication, only an indication of a similar amount of funding for the following year. However, the very long-term deficits remain and have to be addressed. The work we commissioned in November remains essential if we are to bring the finances of council into a very happy position to go forward. But that 2 million does allow us to set aside funding for greener faster, waste in service improvements and the transformation of services, which is a delight. But what we see at the forefront of a residents' worry list at the moment is the cost of living. Benefits will increase in April by 10.1% in line with the inflation as at the end of October last year. So there is an ignoring of 6 months and continuing inflationary pressures. And we know that lower income households spend a far higher proportion of their income on food. Inflation in food is running at 16.1%. So I'm very pleased that we're able to extend the funding for the cost of living support. Despite the longer term challenge, I'm pleased that we're able to produce a budget that maintains school spending, increases project capacity and allows us to resource some teams that have been under unprecedented pressure over the last 3 years. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. On this item, I have a deputation from Councillor Bolton. Would you like to come forward and make your comments?
Good morning and thank you, Chair. Can I start by thanking the finance team for taking the extra time to explain the machinations of local government finance, which I'm only just opening my eyes to the complexity of it, and thank you for the extra time you're taking to walk me through some of those things. The carbon neutrality roadmap has been adopted as the evidence base for which to develop a future carbon reduction plan. Clearly, there is no specific action plan as yet, and the only new provision to deliver carbon neutrality is an extra 250,000 in reserves for greener, faster. The carbon neutrality roadmap states considerable work is required by the councils to reduce its carbon footprint. It also makes clear that the business as usual approach will only result in a minor reduction of 7.5 kilotons of CO2 by 2030 if nothing changes. Where in this budget are the specific allocations for the implementation of any of the suggested interventions and a clear pathway to net zero? Are we to conclude that only 250,000 adding to reserves is required to achieve this, given the prospect of years of uncertain financial pressure from 25 onwards? Or do we have a cunning plan yet to be revealed to perhaps use the 18 million of uncommitted revenue reserves to fund a plan to net zero? Councillor Power, can you at the very least tell me what you expect to spend on the climate emergency in the next year? Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Bolton. Councillor Power.
Thank you, Leader. Throughout every budget within Winchester Council, we are looking for opportunities to reduce our carbon footprint. And I think any portfolio holder before you today will be able to give you detail on what we are doing and where. However, we can only spend what we have, where there is a clear benefit, clear costs, which take some time to refine, and also a clear funding stream. It is not just the council's money that contributes to our carbon reduction. There is grant funding, there is government funding, and hopefully more government funding to come. When those projects are established, they will come forward. Until that work is done, we cannot give detail, Leader. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Power. And I suspect Councillor Learning may have some comments on that topic. I don't know, later or now, it's up to you. But probably the next thing that is useful to highlight, and in terms of questions and matters outstanding, Chief Executive, do we have any comments from the Scrutiny Committee that we should be mindful of in our decision making?
Thank you, Leader. Indeed, notes taken at the time of the meeting indicated there was a conversation around the Council's commitment to greener, faster, specifically what will improve as a result of this additional effort, and a discussion around carbon offsetting. There was also a discussion and answers given regarding the use of the charging of staff time to the Winchester Town Forum, and a discussion on the ongoing support for the voluntary sector that's currently drawn down from the Homelessness Reserve. There was a discussion regarding regeneration, particularly the investment profile, the need and type of the indicated project staff that will be needed to take this work forward. There was also discussion and clarification sought on the proposed changes to the main grade staff pay scales. Discussion on the proposed improvements to the waste and recycling service, and a further discussion on service contracts. And finally, some discussion on the efforts being put behind the strategic budget review to place the council positively in future years. There were also some minor amendments to the report, which will be actioned before the report is printed to council, but they're not material to your decision making today, Leader.
No specific recommendations, but some areas for us to understand better. I don't know if Councillor Power, you have any reaction to those areas, those topics, if there's anything you'd like to add?
Just to say, I'm always happy to hear the comments of scrutiny, Leader. They allow us to prepare best for full council. Thank you. There was also mention of regeneration project staff. That was questioned at scrutiny, and the ossuary or bone store, which led to a very interesting discussion. Thank you.
Thank you. And obviously, as the forward plan shows later in the meeting, we're about to make some very exciting announcements on decisions going forward in terms of Central Winchester regeneration in March. And so obviously having a suitable staffing plan to enable that is part of the process. Colleagues, do we have any other questions from fellow cabinet members? Is there any debate? Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. In a lot of these cases, it can be very tricky, as has been pointed out. Local government finance is very complicated, and to literally pick out of every budget exactly how it's spent is really difficult. Carbon neutrality is the overarching target for this council, and officers throughout the council are working on it, even where that's not obvious. So, for example, we have a strong focus in the transport team on zero carbon transport and active travel, but that doesn't necessarily pull out through the budget lines. The natural environment team is looking at nature-based solutions for reducing carbon and looking at how it manages things. Again, this is not going to be pulled out of a rather dry budget paper. I would like to reassure people that not only are we working on that new carbon neutrality action plan, but in parallel with a funding strategy for those items within it which cannot be absorbed within usual business, if you like, and that is going to be something that we're doing in the summer alongside the development of that new plan. I'm pleased to say we had very good attendance at our carbon neutrality forum last night, and some really positive and enthusiastic discussions about what the council is doing and the direction of travel. I strongly support this budget. I think in very difficult times, we're in a much better position than other councils are, not only generally financially, but in terms of being able to deliver the agenda that we've set out. And as a Liberal Democrat administration, fulfilling those promises that we made to the public over the past few years when we've all been standing for election.
Thank you, Councillor Lerney. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I thoroughly support the recommendations in this budget. As you know, we approved our revised council plan just a month ago, I think it was, and this budget will enable us to deliver on those priorities set out there. As Councillor Lerney's just said, the climate emergency is an overarching top priority for us, and in terms of the business and culture portfolio that I hold, even though it's not necessarily set out in this budget, we are working on a sustainable tourism strategy. There was a scoping paper which I brought to Cabinet, to Business and Housing Policy Committee a few weeks ago, and of course we also have the Green Economic Development strategy that we agreed, I think it was in July last year, which sets out a 2-year action plan on how we might, how the district could benefit from new jobs, goods and services across our district as we move along the carbon reduction route. So even though there's not a line in the budget, as Councillor Lerney pointed out, there is a lot of work going on behind the scenes towards carbon neutrality. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Councillor Porter. Oh, Councillor, you're pointing at Councillor Ferguson. I also have Councillor Gordon-Smith. So, well, actually, I think I saw Councillor Gordon-Smith before I saw. Did I see Councillor Gordon-Smith? Yeah, I did see you before I saw anybody else. So I'll do you next.
Well, I would say I particularly welcome the items spent on pride of place. At the last cabinet meeting, we were criticised by 2 speakers on the state of the toilets. I get a lot of emails on the subject, and we have started to turn this round, but spending money on developing a strategy to direct effort in the right way is very, very sensible. And also the pride of place, there's other items, there's new waste bins and stuff like that. It's difficult to quantify the benefits, but obviously having a town, a market town like Alresford and in the city looking smart creates a sort of subtle impression on people, which is wonderful. And the food waste collection, people are absolutely amazed that in other cities that we don't have such a thing. As we know, it's not in our gift to sort it out immediately, but I think thinking about it and getting this fund in place is absolutely essential as a first step. And I think also in terms of service quality delivery, improving digital services and transforming them to a digital thing saves a huge amount of staff time, which we know is monstrously expensive, and provides a much better service. So I'm very pleased to see these items in the budget. Great stuff.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon-Smith. Deputy Leader.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to pick up also on Councillor Bolton's question about the money set aside to address to lead us on the road to carbon neutrality and that carbon roadmap. In the HRA budget, we didn't talk about it earlier, but there is that 15.7 million that's been allocated over 10 years to help decarbonise our own housing stock. That is a significant investment that we've put forward there. We recognise that additional funding may be needed in that area, and we have to also recognise that we rely on the government also coming forward with funding for that purpose. We also will bid for funding wherever we find there is a fund available to help us on our carbon reduction roadmap. And again, we have recently bid for the Social Housing Decarbonisation Fund up to £1 million to again help with that progress. And also a smaller point which Councillor Power had made about carbon reduction is embedded in each budget. When we talked about the Community Safety Partnership report at scrutiny on Tuesday, one of the small items in that report referred to the fact that we have already invested in 3 electric vehicles for our neighbourhood services, and we have 5 more on offer. That's a small example of where it is embedded in every budget as well. So just to back up Councillor Power's point, I'm very supportive of this budget. I particularly wanted to say that I'm delighted that we continue our support for the cost of living and living well. We do know, again, as Councillor Power said, that the cost of living crisis is very real for people. It's happening now. The energy cap is about to change again in April, which will affect many households who are already very much struggling. We do know that the cost of living package that we put in place in September has had an impact. We know from the reports we have the additional support and advice that's gone in and the impact it's having on people and communities. So I'm really pleased to see that. This budget does support our priorities within the council plan, which are very clear, and I'm very happy to support it. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Deputy Leader. Did I see Councillor Porter? Was that a remnant of you?
No, it really
pointing
was.
at Councillor
It really was.
Ferguson?
I was just making sure you.
Oh, okay. No,
spoke to
that's
Councillor
fine.
Ferguson.
Far away.
Actually, it's the digital transformation. I just wanted to reassure residents that we are 100% committed to supporting people who cannot cope with the digital process that may be required by local councils. We want to take people with us on this journey, not exclude them. I think it's important that we all realise that in any digital process, there will be people who will be real winners, including us as a council, because a lot of people will access our information digitally and access, but things like planning, we are increasingly going to a digital process, which should make the process a lot more streamlined as well as cheaper. So I wanted to reassure everybody that digital transformation is taking people along with us and not excluding them. But I do support the budget for it.
That's a very important point, and inclusion, diversity, hearing from more voices, making sure that people's diverse needs are reflected in the work of the council remains an absolute priority for us. Any further comments for debate? Councillor Power, do you have any final thoughts?
I do, Chairman. Thank you for your support and the support of Cabinet. I do think we need to thank all the staff who have been fully involved in the need to reduce the cost of services while maintaining or improving services. I would also say they are very much aware that those that are currently marginalised should not be further marginalised by the digitisation of services. That remains a concern that we seek answers to at every step. And of course, the finance team have been attending all of these meetings. I'm very, very grateful for their commitment to delivering our council plan. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Power, and thank you for all your work with officers in order to get this paper prepared. Thank you also to the officers for working with the opposition to make sure that they're properly briefed. Democracy only works if those members of the opposition, and I speak as somebody who sometimes is a member of the opposition in another place, have access to professional briefing and support, and it actually helps make all of us make better decisions if we're all better informed. So that's also appreciated. I'm really pleased to see this budget reflect the priorities that we've set forward in our council plan. We've talked about going greener faster, and this budget lays out how we will do that, both as through the greener faster line and also the future of waste. We talk about pride in place, and again, that's very closely linked to our plans for regeneration. And the other work that's going on to transform what we're doing to reflect the financial pressures that we're under, which also gives us more space to be able to respond on challenges of cost of living and living well in terms of what we're able to offer, making sure that what we're doing efficiently and well and inclusively, as everybody has talked about. So Cabinet, we're being asked again to make a recommendation to Council on this particular one. On this particular paper. Chief Executive, are there any adjustments to the recommendations that I should be aware of, or no. Nothing in terms of the headlines that we're talking through now? I will take it as read if there are any corrections, that they'll be done in time for the main meeting. So colleagues, we're being asked to agree the level of the general fund, or agree to recommend the level of the general fund budget as shown in Appendix A, the creation and transfer to reserves, supporting the key priorities in the council plan, as we have talked. Oh, sorry, Councillor Thompson.
Apologies for interrupting. 3c, I probably shouldn't vote on that, so I wonder whether we could have a separate vote.
Right. Okay. I will run that accordingly. So we will, in the first round, we will vote on absolutely everything apart from 3C. Okay. So I'll take you through everything that we're going to vote for. So the next recommendation that we will vote for first are the Pride in Place investment proposals relating to the regeneration budget, the Town Forum bus shelter replacement programme, the street scene works, the tree works, the National Environment and Recreation team, then recommendation 4 relating to the salary budget and the point increase on the existing pay scales, the reflecting the HRA paper, the 7% discretionary cap on the increase in rent for part home purchase scheme property owners, the special expenses of £1,186,879 relating to the Winchester Town Forum account, the special council tax for the Winchester Town Forum unparished areas of Band D to be increased by £4.22 to a year, that is, to £80.93. that the surplus balance on the council tax collection fund be approved, that the Band D for city council services to be increased to £155.29 a year. That's a £4 increase, reflecting an average council tax increase of 2.65%. So that's £4 a year that we're increasing council tax by. Approving the new council tax reduction scheme income bands as in Appendix E to ensure that claimants continue to receive the same level of support after the increase in universal credit from April 2023. And finally, approving the distribution of the government's £150,512 council tax support fund through a reduction to council tax balances in line with the government's guidance and additional local criteria detailed in paragraph 17. So, Cabinet, are we agreed to make those recommendations to council?
Agreed.
And a separate recommendation, 3C, do we agree to freeze the proposed grant funding reductions to Hampshire Cultural Trust and maintain pre-22-23 funding levels until the end of 24-25 at a cost of £43,000 per annum? Obviously, Councillor Thompson will not be voting on this. Do we agree with that proposal?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much indeed. On to the next paper, the Capital Investment Strategy. Councillor Power.
Thank you, Leader. This strategy details the plans necessary to deliver our capital spending programme for the next 10 years. That amounts to £37.4 million for the General Fund and £432.6 million for the HRA. It gives the governance, the risk appetite and the impact on the medium-term financial strategy. It also sets out the approval and project management protocols and the prudential indicators required by SIPFA and the Department for Levelling Up Housing and Communities. I would appreciate any questions.
Colleagues, we don't have any deputations on this, so straight to Cabinet questions. Do we have any Cabinet questions on the paper? Is there any debate? Are there any scrutiny comments that we need to consider? Chief Executive or?
I have none recorded. There was a general discussion regarding the context and the process for identifying capital and the movement across the years, but I have nothing specific.
Councillor Power, would you like to respond to the barrage of comments and questions that you've received from the fellow members of Cabinet?
I'm most grateful, Leader. There were some other matters discussed at scrutiny, SIL funding, the General Fund reserves, the demolition costs and capital receipt on the River Park Leisure Centre. I'm very glad to hear your announcement at the beginning of the meeting. Central Winchester regeneration, the role of council assets and implications to revenue, and what elements of the capital programme deliver something, not quite sure what. 742. Oh yes, it was the graph at 11.4.2. Mr. Aitken is here and is very happy to give you a extended synopsis of the assumptions, figures and matters which contribute to that very final graph, should Cabinet so wish, but I am very much reassured by what he has told me. Thank you.
My understanding from having spoken to Mr. Aitken last night is that most of that graph is my fault, I think, as a result of responsibility for the asset management programme and the planned disposals that we are looking back and have assumed within the capital programme. And in essence, the effect of those is to turn a site into cash, and that has implications on our capital balances, the interest we receive, and leads to the resulting graph. Have I understood the situation correctly, Mr. Aitken?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that pretty much sums it up. When we get a capital receipt, we've got a choice. We can either keep it to spend on other capital projects, or we can use it to reduce the borrowing requirement from projects in the past, such as the leisure centre, for example. When we do the latter, we can effectively convert the capital receipt into a revenue benefit because we no longer have to finance those borrowing costs.
Good. There you go. So thank you to me. Well, actually, thank you to the team that I'm responsible for the work that they're doing, which will improve our capital position. Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Power, Mr. Aitken, all the officers involved in putting this plan together. It is worthy of a read. There's a lot in here in terms of talking about how we're investing in going greener faster, what we're doing on energy management, energy efficiency, the extra spending on council homes, the work that's happening in central Winchester regeneration at Friarsgate and King's Walk. So lots of good things here, worth reading through for those that are interested, very much reflecting the priorities of the programme. So Cabinet, we have a different set of priorities to agree here, some of which is a recommendation to Council. So I think I'll take them in separately. So first is the recommendation to Council. So we're being asked to agree the capital investment strategy, including the capital programme and capital programme financing in Appendixes A and B, the minimum revenue provision policy statement in Appendix E, the flexible use of capital receipts strategy in Appendix G, and the prudential indicators indicated in the report and Appendix F. So Cabinet, do you agree to make that recommendation to Council? Good, thank you. And then separately, there are some things that we are agreeing on our own account, which will not go forward to Council. So one is subject to Council approval of the capital programme. Do you agree the expenditure on IMT equipment and software expenditure, which is 120,000 in 23-24, as detailed in paragraph 11.8.7, and up to 320,000 of additional expenditure for the demolition of Friarsgate Medical Centre in respect of the overage payable as detailed in paragraph 11.2.4? Do you agree the delegation to the corporate head of service, economy and communities in consultation with the section 151 officer to incur capital expenditure in accordance with the requirements of the UK Shared Prosperity Fund as detailed in paragraph 11.2.4? And are you happy to note the requirement to ensure that members have the right knowledge and skills to undertake their governance role and that the ongoing support and training offered to members is continued and enhanced as required? Hamlet, do you agree with those proposals as well? Thank you very much indeed. On to the next paper, which is the Treasury Management Strategy. And I would like to thank Mr. Bouchflower. I hope I pronounced that correctly. No, okay. Well, how do I say it?
Bowflower.
Bowflower, okay. So we have that on record now, on video. Thank you very much indeed for coming down from up the road, from the castle, to advise us on this particular paper. Councillor Power, would you like to introduce the paper?
Thank you, Leader. I'd be delighted. This paper sets out the forecasted borrowing needs based on our capital investment strategy and our general fund and HRA budgets. The borrowing and investment strategy for those sums and the Treasury management and prudential indicators. This paper is required by the CIPFA code and reflects the previous two papers. There are two key changes in this paper. It increases the limit on the amount we can invest beyond 1 year from 20 to 25 million and allows for the community municipal bonds as a source of borrowing should we feel the need to use that path. I'd welcome questions, Leader.
Thank you very much indeed. I'll start quickly because we don't have any deputations on this. Were there any points raised at scrutiny that you would like to highlight or address?
Thank you, Leader. There were questions about the pooled property fund, and we reaffirmed our enthusiasm for that fund, I think, very clearly. And there were questions on the key principles of the investment strategy, which were handled at the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Cabinet, colleagues, do you have any questions that you would like to ask about the paper? Is there any debate? Councillor Porter.
Yes, we have our SIL, Community Infrastructure Levy funding, which we hold, and we also share it with the county council. There's a certain amount that's actually held by the county council. Do we know how much of that is unspent and how much is spent? Because it comes out in their infrastructure funding statement. That's a question. I don't think it can be answered today, but I think it'd be an interesting question to find out. Having investigated lots of other districts, there's a lot of money unspent in all of them. And I wondered how that money is invested and whether it's kept in our fund generally or whether it's invested separately. Do we know that?
That's a question, but I think one maybe we hand over to.
I don't think it's something
sounds
that may be answered
technical.
today.
I don't know if we have an immediate answer from officers.
Thank you, Chair. In terms of still funding that we hold that isn't spent, it makes up part of our capital and investment balances, so is invested in accordance with the Treasury Management Strategy.
Okay, so once it's handed over to another authority, it's not part of our conversation at all anyway, is it?
No.
Okay.
But while it remains with us, we benefit from interest effectively
Yeah,
that we
okay.
receive on it.
Thank you. Can I just confirm that there isn't any requirement to hand it back at any stage if it's not spent?
Apologies, I'm going to look at Liz and hope she knows the answer to that.
The way that we hold the SIL balances, we account for those as creditors on our balance sheet, effectively recognising that we may have to repay some of those balances. While we have the cash, they're just breaking standard cash balances.
But we use them up sequentially from the back, do we? We can't take them. We don't have to. They have to be for specific response.
Because there's a legal dimension to this, it might be helpful to get to the response of the monitoring officer.
Thank you, Leader. It can depend on the decision and the agreements that are made. So some of them are time limited. That tended to be something of the old Section 106 days and development. So we would have to have a look and double check. And that's a conversation that I think you and I had, and I was going to kind of see that through. But yeah, so it can be dependent on the terms of the payments. So again, it would depend on who they came from and which development. Thank you. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you for your clarity on this. I'd just also like to just say that we really appreciate the Arlene Close briefings. I think they're really helpful. And having sat through them for many years now, it really gives you a growing picture of the changes that we're seeing on the national scale, on a local scale as well. So thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed. Any other comments or questions or debate from Cabinet colleagues? Councillor Power.
I'd just like to thank Cabinet for their support on this and reiterate the suggestion that all members attend the Arlene Coast briefings. They are very, very good. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. I would also like to also recommend the Arlene Close briefings. I would like to thank City Council officers for all their work on this. I would like to thank County Council officers for the support they provide to us and also many other authorities around the Hampshire area. This is one where we really benefit from working together. And we benefit from the scale and expertise that the County Council can bring in supporting the work that we do. So colleagues, we're again being asked to make a recommendation to Council. Firstly, that the Treasury Management Strategy, which includes the Annual Treasury Investment Strategy for 23-24 and the remainder of 22-23 is approved. Secondly, that the authority has delegated the Section 151 officer to manage the Council's high yielding investments portfolio and long-term borrowing according to the Treasury Management Strategy as appropriate. And 3, that authority is delegated the Section 151 officer, who in turn discharges this function to Hampshire County Council's Director of Corporate Operations, as agreed in the service level agreement, to manage all council investments other than the high yield portfolio and short-term borrowing according to the Treasury Management Strategy statement as appropriate. Cabinet, are we agreed? Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, Mr. Beauflower. Please thank also all colleagues involved in in managing our council investments at Hampshire and express our gratitude for the work they do. Thank you, Mr. Aitken, finance officers, for all your work on producing the paper that we have in front of us. The last item of the agenda is the forward plan, where we are asked to note forthcoming items. Cabinet, are you happy to note those items? And with that, I believe we have reached the end of the meeting. Can I thank again all the officers for the work that they, tremendous amount of work, also the directorial team for that they've done. The budgets we have in front of us are not just a function of the finance team, but reflect the finance team's leadership role in working with all the other functions of the department of the council to make sure that there's a joined up view as to how we financially are going to operate in the next 12 months. And that leadership role and the work that you've done with all councillors, all officers right across the council is greatly appreciated in bringing what we have in front of us today. Obviously, thank you to the directorial team. Thank you, Cabinet. And on that note, I declare the meeting closed.